Communications and Public Transportation Committee for Tuesday, September 17th, 2019. Clerk, please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Simon.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Shrine. Mr. Shrine is absent. There is a quorum.
Thank you. And we are expecting Councilman Jones today. Let's see, any public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, Ms. Liu.
Good afternoon. Here we have got some ups and downs, debates, discussion about a certain detail, maybe terminology or certain concept for our Inspector General office work, which is very important, and I really appreciate all the efforts everybody put in. That's what I'm looking for this report also. However, another issue this committee may pay attention to, that will be our public transportation. RTA will have another round of community meetings and a survey from next week. And I have sent all the council members the schedules, so you can see the areas they cover, and they put on different dates and times right now to accommodate county residents' schedule, different type of schedules. And I also wish county council members, you may pick the location close to you and to come to see the ideas right now RTA will have for the service and all the county residents, their feedback. Of course, these things has been accumulated for a long time. For them to make improvement right away is not very possible, just like all other county issues we have on hand. However, today I got a chance at Tower City. I actually saw the new CEO, General Manager, RTA board selected in person. And I wish this committee will set up a meeting soon, so you will be also to see her here, maybe ask her a question or get a feedback from her, maybe for her first couple months feels about this. And I really wish all our tasks will be carried out, to everybody's satisfaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, we appreciate it. All right, we'll hold off on the minutes to be approved and move right into the matters that are referred to committee, which of course, in this particular case, are not referred, but we do have a Inspector General semi-annual report beginning January 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2019. So thank you for coming, and thank you for giving us an overview.
Chairwoman Baker, thank you. Members of the committee, thank you very much. We spoke last about 6 weeks ago, and so I covered some of the material already that was in the report. And so as I stand here, I'm trying to think about the balance between being conscious of your time, but also kind of covering the pieces before. So I've got a PowerPoint that I'm trying not to repeat what was already done before. And so I think what I'd like to try to do to kind of balance the need to be accountable and to provide information without wasting anyone's time is try to walk through this quickly. But of course, with the chairwoman's permission, if there are ever any questions during the course of it, please let me know, and I'm happy to take questions now or later as it may be. So let me do a quick, if I can learn how to use our PowerPoint. No, that goes to the last one. Operator error here. Okay, all right.
It's not touch screen.
It's not touch screen.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So just one slide briefly on, I think, what we already covered before, which was in the 6 months ending on June 30th, we closed 20 investigations. We helped precipitate $169,000 in new tax payments. We reviewed 249 secondary employment and private business activity disclosures for conflicts of interest, reviewed 186 nepotism forms, did background checks for 154 contractors, 61 separate ethics opinions, 4 new debarments, and those were all based upon failure to pay taxes for county contractors. We did a free CLE program for county attorneys, provided in-person ethics trainings for every new county employee, and we also worked with HR to address the issue of what happens for updated and current background checks, and one of their responses to us was that they've now implemented a computerized system to doing that. So let me talk a little bit about what's happened then, and also I want to address some of the questions that the chair has posed regarding it. And so rather than repeat what we talked about before and is in the overview, I want to talk a few other things. One of the things that I can't talk about are open and pending confidential investigations. So let me apologize in advance for that, but we're required to keep them confidential, and so we do so. But one of the questions posed was an update on taxes since June 30th of this year, July 1st. And one of our issues was one of our key employees was on medical leave who handles a lot of this. But since then, we've had a little bit of an increase, about $11,000 from our vendor background checks. So whenever they register, we make sure that we don't approve a new registration if they're delinquent on the taxes. While that's good, that only happens every 4 years when they register. We don't do it on a regular basis when they get new contracts. Might be something we should look at. Secondly, another $23,000 came in with respect to assisting the county prosecutor and the county treasurer to collect by sending them letters of potential debarment. And that's a bit of a drop off. Altogether, we've done $1.7 million, but the summer's been a slow period. And so we expect when we send out another round of letters that by the end of this 6-month period, we should be substantially above that.
Great.
Debarments are, of course, important. There are 10 debarred contractors currently on our list. And just as a historical perspective, 28 of those rolled off last year. 11 will end. 11 have ended already in 2019, and another 3 will end by the end of 2019. So there will be 7, but we anticipate a few more as we send out more letters to assist the county prosecutor in collecting funds. Driver's license review is something that we do twice a year. And I want to say thank you in particular for the council's decision to require responses from county departments. And you'll see that for December of 18, when we did it, there were 22 driver's license, and we have a number of issues that are out there. And when we get to the next period, you'll see that there's been some responsiveness on that issue as well. But just to update, there were 9 suspensions. 4 was just a period of suspension that expired during the period, full expiration, period of expiration. And so out of those, for the ones that we got responses for, we got responses for all of them, I should say. 12 were county employees who, although their driver's license was suspended or expired, didn't drive during the course of county business. 5 are no longer county employees, so there was no further disciplinary action to be taken. 2 of which received a written reprimand and/or a temporary demotion. One of those was protected by a collective bargaining agreement, so that demotion was temporary. And then 3 we're told are still in process. But we had a significant improvement in the next cycle. So when we did it in July of 19, instead of being 22, we were half of that at 11, and the responsiveness was better, although the HR reviews are still in process. So we've gotten responses on all 11. 1 did not drive in the course of county business. 1 is no longer a county employee. 2 have received verbal reprimands, and 7, again, because we just sent this out in July and we're now at the beginning of September, there is an HR review in process for those 7. So again, I'm trying to move quickly through this so that I'm respectful of your time.
If I may interrupt for a minute, only because having a county employee driving on a suspended license could be highly probable not only because they're not covered in insurance, but for any accidents that they may have. The review and process, I mean, what does it take on their end to say whether or not those 7 employees, and are those 7 suspensions, or do we know what they are?
Well, I believe that we do know what they are. If you could bear with me one moment. Okay, one is a suspension, physical control, loss of physical control while under the influence. HR is reviewing for possible discipline. Another suspension is, it just says non-compliance, but reinstatement of privileges was sent to the BMV on September 2nd. There's a license forfeiture. 3 of them are expired licenses. And people do forget when so some of these are, obviously they have important consequences for liability for the county, and yet some of them are very human errors, for which, although it's serious in terms of the possible consequences, it's not like a DUI.
I guess the question maybe more appropriately asked is, are the 7 absolutely not driving for the county at this point?
Correct.
Okay, so there's
Correct.
nothing in process of whether or not they should or shouldn't be driving. All 7 are not driving. It's just now figuring out where they are in that.
Correct.
Okay,
And one of the things that was different in this cycle was that the departments responded to us. And in the past, the response was somewhat spotty. And so I think that the improvement and the change in the ordinance has really helped the response rate on this and has made department directors pay attention to the issue.
good, thank
For
you.
which I am very grateful.
Right, most important, the directors can manage it as they see fit. It's making sure that those county employees are not driving. That's-
And I regard this process as we have to pay attention to the pennies and we have to pay attention to details, and so this is important in part just to be a factor of good management of the county and steward of taxpayers' risks.
Thank you.
There were also some specific issues that we tried
have
to
a
follow up
question?
on. Councilman Miller? Okay. And so we've done prior recommendations, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to follow up on those recommendations. And so the first one I want to speak about is our Department of Development loan accounts, where we've done a number of recommendations over the past few years. And I want to say that there have been really tremendous improvements in the Department of Development. And this goes credit for Ted Carter, but also those who are kind of on the ground. So Brian Edwards and Sona Lahoti are really detail-oriented people that have done a great job. But being suspicious people, we always believe in verifying. So we are in the process of doing a sample to make sure that it is in fact correct. But frankly, I've been very impressed.
Good.
Secondly, as you know, there have been an issue of missing payments from the Treasury. Since December of last year, 5 payments have gone missing, some of which we believe have been stolen, and we issued a number of Treasury recommendations. And so we're in the process of evaluating that. I can tell you that with respect to this issue, we are a little bit less optimistic at this point. There was another missing payment in July. And so although the policies exist on paper, and the most recent one in terms of paper recommendations was issued on September 11th, there is still an implementation issue, which I think is very serious and very important, that we make sure that we take care of cash when it comes in. The third question, in terms of responding to some of the questions that I received from the chair, has to do with the APHIS report for the misspending of $300,000 of federal grant money. That was a joint investigation with the internal audit department, and so it had to be approved by the county audit board. That occurred on September 5th, and so they'll have 30 days to offer any more response, and we haven't received that yet. So October 5th, we anticipate that there will be some sort of response from the affected departments.
Before you leave that slide. So the Treasury Department had a continued concerns, and I know it was your recommendation that they implement the best practices identified by the Ohio Treasurer, and the Department of Internal Audit. So are they in the process of doing that? Do they have in place at least what it is they should be following? And then the second problem is, are they following it? But do they at least have something where they recognize there's a problem? They have put it in writing for whoever should follow them later, so that there is a procedure to be followed, even though perhaps it sounds like they still have some concerns.
Yes, with respect to the issuance of a set of policies, which occurred September 5th. And actually, we just met yesterday with the county treasurer, the county executive, and the chief of staff, and the head of internal audit to talk about how do we make sure that we're actually implementing these things and that we are effective. It's my understanding that at some point next week, the county treasurer is going to propose new and tightened improvements, and then we're going to continue to follow up and verify that these are implemented. One of the core issues is that there is not a receipt generated from our system. And it was my understanding that all cash payors would receive a machine-generated receipt. Well, that's only partially correct. What we have is a cash counting machine, and that will generate a receipt, but it doesn't tie into our computer system to track it. Right. And so it's not immediately entered as you would with a cash register or something else. And so that's an ongoing issue in terms of our cash handling.
The two, this one, which you're looking for new improvements to follow, and the misuse of the APHIS report from the from the internal audit report, that's October 5th. So we will not be meeting again for a little while. Can you follow up with both of that and send to us or send to me, and I'll make sure the members get it so that we can bring some closure, hopefully, to both of those issues?
Absolutely. And let me kind of give you just a big picture piece of what I understand to be happening. One of the problems with the APHIS handling of that grant was it seemed to fall between the responsibilities of IT and the responsibilities of the medical examiner's office and PSJS. And one of the things that PSJS is doing is saying, we are going to take responsibility for all of this from now on. And so that's my understanding, that there won't be a division in terms of handling and implementation. But again, they may give me more information or different information.
Do you agree with that, that they should take the responsibility and that one person and they be the entity?
Yes, I think that's one of the things that they need to do. We also made other recommendations, and the internal audit did as well, in terms of adopting practices for project management as well. But yes, there needs to be responsibility and accountability for those funds. And whenever you divide those, it becomes problematic. And that's one of the things that happened with that.
Any questions on either one of these two? They're pretty big that we've been talking about. Yes, Councilman Miller.
Regarding the cash management, is the implementation of the ERP system going to give us any help on this, or is the ERP not related to this?
It is related, and let me just be blunt and direct, which is I've been hearing since I took this job 4 years ago that ERP is going to solve everything. And I don't mean to be too skeptical, but that has occurred. So the plan is for ERP to help integrate all of these things, and it should, but we have to do something in the meantime. So I don't know when ERP will in fact be implemented. And I think that as stewards of taxpayer dollars, we can't wait until Godot comes and ERP arrives.
The last core item on ERP is scheduled to be implemented on April 1st of 2020, and they're saying they're digging in their heels on that date, because as we know, the date has been a moving target, but they're trying to unmove the target. So that's in just over 6 months, so hopefully we'll get some help on that.
And in fact, Councilman Miller, through the chair, that the April 1st deadline came up yesterday in our conversations with the treasurer, the county executive, chief of staff, and internal audit. And obviously, it's April 1st and April Fool's Day, but we are hopefully it will be implemented correctly and we will be done by then.
The footnote to that, though, is that the reporting piece for much of this has been delayed, or descoped as they call it, until the end of 2020. So that could be an implementation process by the end of March, but the reporting piece that was also important to this could be part of it that's still delayed. But
To the extent that it affects my office, the implementation of ERP was being handled initially by Corey Swaysgood and then also Kim Seeley, who was very, very involved. And unfortunately, both of those individuals have left the county with a tremendous amount of knowledge. But in transitioning out, Kim Seeley has been meeting with John Cornwell, who is a shared employee between my staff and internal audit, to try to pick up some of the reporting piece and to not lose all of that historical knowledge. So my office previously had nothing to do or very little to do with ERP, but my understanding is that going forward, my half employee will be more involved.
good. All right, looks like you can continue.
But we're also trying to expand our big data projects, and so we have a couple of things going and which are in the works. One is compliance with the county contractor registration. As you know, there's an exemption for any contractor that's under $10,000. And so we decided to test whether there was a match between the amounts that we've paid out to contractors and their registration. And so we did a pivot table of those who have received more than $10,000 along with our registration. And we found that there were slightly over 1,000 contractors who appeared to be over $10,000 who were not registered, who had not gone through background checks. And so we sent out postcards and notices last week, and we're in the process of making sure that they comply. Another data project that we're starting to look at is county fleet usage and GPS. So we have pretty good GPS tracking, but we want to look at usage trends. There are also a handful of vehicles that are not on GPS for a variety of reasons. We're going to look at that as well. And then the last part is an ongoing issue, which is contracts that come before the Board of Control and the County Council after work has already begun on the contracts. And so we're going to take a big picture view of those. You may recall that about a year and a half ago, we took a look at it and we found that approximately 34% of county contracts had already had work commenced before it had been approved. And so we're gonna take another look and evaluate whether things have improved or stayed the same or gone the wrong direction.
Well, Councilman Miller and I certainly appreciate that. That is something we've been questioning since I've been there. That's good to know, and we appreciate having a report back. Having contracts presume or continue without approval and may or may not have been paid for in that interim. It's bad both ways, that we would continue a service without paying for it, but then worse, paying for it and not being approved. So those that line of business, I think, needs to be improved. Appreciate you looking at it. Were you surprised by the 1,000, 10,000 exemption contractors?
I was a little surprised that it was that high, but I would say this, which is we've sent out a letter and we've gotten a handful of questions back of people who should be exempt, but for whatever reason it wasn't indicated. So it was a little higher than I expected, but I don't think we know what the real number is until we've gotten feedback. Okay. And I'll give you some examples of those. So we pay attorneys for a variety of reasons. If you are court appointed, you don't have to register. An assigned counsel does not have to register with my office. On the other hand, if you're special counsel or if you've been hired, and I don't want to take the name of any large law firm here, but we contract with some large law firms on very large projects, and they are not assigned counsel. So simply looking at something and saying, oh, this person's an attorney, we don't know if they're exempt or not exempt until we know more about it. So some of those are going to drop off. I'm very confident it'll be under 1,000, but we'll see where it comes out. We've just started.
What is your timeline on getting answers back? Did you give them a specific time
I
to
think
get
we
back?
told them by next week. When did
Oh,
we tell
okay,
them?
so,
Did we give them 30 days?
yeah, okay. That's another one. If you have an update for us, please just send it along and we can help track what you're doing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead and continue.
I think some of these we've talked about already, but it just responses to questions that were posed to me. The missing cash draft policy was circulated September 11th. We should get a revised policy next week, and we are going to continue to check and follow up on the implementation of that. APHIS responses are due the 5th. And then another question that was posed in the semi-annual report, we indicated that we were still working on access to county documents, but those at this point are because of technical issues of making sure that our communications and our IT person can get access, really not resistance anymore. We had a much larger issue in February when the one particular department head indicated that we were not going to get access. The county executive intervened and took care of that.
So that's, that was an isolated case?
Yes.
Otherwise, you feel that access is pretty open?
Pretty open. There's some foot dragging in some places, and there have been a couple of cases where we've sort of kicked the can down the road, which is we've pushed the issue further. But for right now, I think we're good. We don't need council's assistance on this issue.
Okay, good.
Question.
Go ahead, Councilman Miller.
On the policy regarding missing cash, what's going to be the approval process on that? Is it going to go to council? Is it going to go to the administrative rule board, or how is that going to be handled?
I don't know the answer to that. I have not heard discussions about doing it other than kind of internally and having it written and implementing it. So I don't know the answer about whether it'll be approved by any other body other than the executive administration.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you check around and let me know?
Yes, and frankly, I hadn't even thought about that issue, so thank you for raising it.
Okay.
In response to specific questions about what big data we're doing, I think we've talked a little bit about this. We also did something on job postings, by the way, about how long jobs are out there, and so we're going to follow up on that. Did driver's licenses. We did a general piece on county contractors, and that led us to this review of exemptions that we're doing in terms of big data, and then we'll look at late contracts as well. Another question in terms of our goals was expedited conflict reviews. One of the things that I think my office needs to do better is to respond more quickly to people who come to us for questions about conflicts. And so one of the things that we're going to try to do is to set up a web-based form, because oftentimes the delay is that we don't have enough information about where the conflict is posed, what are the interests of the different parties, and the hope is to expedite that as well. That's something that we want to be customer focused, and we just want to do better on responding. So another question was posed about, you're going to audit contracts. That was one of our goals. Tell us a little bit about that. So let me give you some examples, both specific and general, some of which I've talked about already. But more specifically, there are a couple contracts with respect to data storage, data maintenance, data support, where it's really hard to get a clear grip on what we have gotten for the money, whether the contractor has complied, and in some cases there are significant claimed overages that we're going to take a look at to see whether in fact we are liable for overages of data usage, if that's the case or not. So that's specific, and in terms of more general, again, it's the contractor exemptions and the late contracts that we're going to look at.
Good, thanks. The first one that you mentioned, I didn't want to interrupt you. What is the job postings? What is it that you're
One of
looking
the things
at
that we
there?
were looking at was how long jobs are up, and
That's
so
what I thought.
so that's important for two reasons. One is those that are too short and those that are too long. So we had a number of job postings where they were put up on a Friday before a holiday and taken down on a Tuesday, and that situation was too short. But in others, sometimes they're out there for so long that it tells us that maybe we need to look at how to keep these open, how to attract good candidates. So those are, sometimes they're too short and sometimes they're too long, and they tell us different stories.
It's, we had a conversation with our ERP leadership where we have specific job openings that we're having a difficult time filling. And I'm not sure if this is related to that, if there's anything there. One was in IT, the other one was in fiscal. Hard to say whether this was a part of that, I'm not sure. But it's good. That's why I questioned what you meant by job postings.
Yes, and so, and again, there are different levels. So we had a situation that was ultimately resolved in IT, where the IT department would pre-screen candidates, which isn't appropriate. Then they would post after they'd already picked someone, and then they would close the posting very quickly to have that. So that wasn't the case. There were also some questions about, hey, can we use ZipRecruiter or others, to which we've said, absolutely, we should be doing all of these, but they have to be in addition to our required posting requirements that are here for the county. So we should use every means we can to attract good candidates, but they still have to go through our public posting process.
Well, whatever you can do to enhance or help in that process, I'm sure the directors would appreciate it. It's been a difficult one. All right, please continue.
Just a couple more, and I think we're done.
Good.
Just wanted to update you on the 4 goals that we had set forth. One was to continue to assist and cooperate with law enforcement, and so we do that. And some weeks we're very busy with that, and then sometimes we don't hear from them for 3, 4, or 5 weeks. But so we're there. The second is expediting responses to ethics inquiries. I think we talked about that. The third one is to initiate the contract audits. Again, I think I talked a little bit about that, both with respect to specific issues that we're looking at and broader as well. And then the fourth goal was to expand cooperation with tax collection with the efforts of the fishbowl. The county prosecutor and the county treasurer really deserve a lot of credit for bringing back this system. And so we are looking forward to expanding that and working towards it. So
Great.
That's what I tried to do, to be short and concise.
Very good.
And I
Appreciate it.
appreciate all of your time.
Any other questions on this? The only other question I had that I may have said it and I didn't hear it. That was we have an awful lot under investigations under poor proper management practices, and I just wondered, unless that's something you can't talk about, where is it that you are finding poor or improper management practices? It's listed on page 17.
So there are kind of 4 main categories that come through, or at least that came through in this first 6-month period. The first was alleged misuse of vehicles and time. And so that's one of the reasons that we're looking at GPS issues.
Good.
To take a look at that. The second had to do with APHIS. We got a handful of complaints about the misspending of the federal grant money. The third was follow-up of Department of Development loans that were improperly issued or not properly administered. And what I mean by that, and it's not really loans so much as it is, on the community development side, we assist homeowners in getting their houses weatherized. We have agreements with contractors to come in and do repairs so that we keep people in their houses and we make them taken care of more. So we have a significant number, they're low dollar, but the number is significant, of contractors who perform the work and then they're not paid on time, or there's a dispute about did they do the work properly. So we try to facilitate that and try to, if they have done the work, try to expedite them getting paid because they need it. If there's a dispute about whether they did a good job or not, that's really not up to us. And so we say, look, if Department of Development says you did a crummy job, we're not going to second guess that. So,
Okay, good.
and then just quickly, 2 more pieces. Jail management, as the jail crisis came up, a lot of issues came to us, some of which are very serious, and we immediately forwarded those to the sheriff, the regional jail director, prosecutors.
Right.
Some were, people complaining about not getting gluten-free diets.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's that.
That's good. Well, thank you. Most of those you did cover, the contractors not being paid on time. That could be part of what we see in Board of Control of, services rendered but not paid because it hadn't been approved yet, because it's been submitted late. So there could be a tie there. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Well, we really appreciate, let's see if we can, we will thank you very much for your overview. You've covered, I think, everything we asked for. If you can get back to us on the few things that you're still waiting for a response before we should meet again. Hopefully, there's not a lot to talk about next time we meet. But we're getting a very good understanding, I think, through these reports as to what we're doing, what you're doing, what our departments are doing, and where the weaknesses are and what we're doing to overcome those. So thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and I'm always available with a phone call or an email.
Good. All right, we're going to go back to approval of the minutes. So if I may have a motion? Thank you. Second? Great. So hearing the motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Nothing opposed, so minutes are approved. If there is no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.